Have you ever watched a football match and wondered, why 11 players on each team? Why not 12? Or 15? Or even 20? The pitch is huge. There's plenty of space. More players should mean more action, right? But if you added just a few more players, the entire game would start to break down. The passing would change. The strategy would collapse. And football, as we know it, would feel completely different. Today, we're uncovering the surprising reason football settled on 22 players, and why that number is almost perfect. Football was not always 11 versus 11. In the early days of football in the 1800s, there was no standard number of players. Some schools played with 15 per side. Others used 20. Some matches had over 30 players on each team. It was chaos. Imagine a giant crowd of players chasing one ball with almost no structure. Passing was rare. Dribbling through traffic was nearly impossible. Games often turned into messy scrambles rather than tactical battles. Different schools had different rules, so when teams tried to play each other, arguments broke out before the match even started. Football needed order. In 1863, England's Football Association stepped in to standardize the rules of the game. One of the biggest questions was how many players should be on each side. They did not just pick 11 randomly. Most schools at the time already played with 11 players because of a practical reason. School dormitories often housed 10 students plus a prefect or captain. That made 11 a natural team size. Since many early clubs formed from these schools, 11 versus 11 became common. When the official rules were written, they stuck with what most teams were already using. But that was just the beginning. Something interesting happened once the game stabilized at 11 players. The sport started to evolve. A football pitch is large, but not endless. With 22 players spread across it, something special happens. There is just enough space for passing lanes to open, players to make runs, defenders to cover ground, midfielders to control tempo. If you add more players, space disappears fast. Passing becomes harder because lanes close down. Dribbling becomes nearly impossible because defenders are everywhere. The game slows down and turns crowded. We actually see this in youth football today. When too many kids are on a small field, it becomes a swarm around the ball. Not much strategy, just congestion. 11 players creates balance between chaos and control. The birth of positions. Once teams locked in at 11 players, tactics began to form. Defenders stayed back. Midfielders connected play. Forwards attacked. Goalkeepers protected the net. With fewer players, teams would lack coverage. With more players, roles would overlap too much. 11 allows specialization without overcrowding. It gives us formations like 4-4-2, 4-3-3, and 3-5-2. These systems depend on space and structure. Add 2 or 3 extra players per side, and these formations stop working. The pitch would feel smaller. Long passes would be riskier. Counterattacks would be harder. Football's beautiful flow depends on controlled spacing. There is also the physical side. Football players run an average of 9 to 12 kilometers per match. They press, sprint, defend, and attack constantly. With 11 players, teams can cover the pitch while still leaving space to exploit. Add more players, and the game becomes more about short bursts and less about endurance and movement. Remove players, and it becomes exhausting with too much open space to defend. 11 hits the sweet spot between athletic demand and tactical depth. What if there were more? Let's imagine football with 13 or 15 players per team. The midfield would be packed. Through balls would be rare. Long-range shots would be blocked more often. Wingers would have less room to run. Defenses would sit deeper because there are more bodies to cover space. The game would look slower, more crowded, and more defensive. In fact, some indoor or small-sided versions of football use fewer players, like 5 a side, because the field is smaller. The number of players always matches the space available. 11 per side is what fits a full-size pitch best. The perfect balance. So football does not have 22 players by accident. It is the result of history, school traditions, evolving tactics, field size, human endurance, and the need for balance between space and structure. Too many players, the game suffocates. Too few, it stretches too thin. But 11 versus 11? It creates passing lanes, dramatic counterattacks, tactical battles, and those magical moments of space that make football the world's most popular sport. Sometimes, the reason something feels right is because generations of trial and error quietly shaped it that way. And now you know. Do you think football would be more exciting or more boring if each team had two extra players?